Welcome, everybody.
Good evening, folks. Welcome. We're just opening the webinar room here for you to get comfortable and situated. Feel free to grab a glass of water, a cup of tea, make yourself comfortable, and we'll be starting the presentation in exactly 4 minutes. Thank you. Hello and welcome, everyone. We are just getting everything set up here for the webinar tonight. We'll be starting in exactly 2 minutes, so get yourself comfortable, grab a glass of water, a cup of tea, and we'll be starting here shortly. Thank you. All right. Good evening, everyone. Hello, and thank you for joining us for this wellness talk about immunity and how to keep those pesky colds and flus at bay. I know I have a toddler, and staying healthy this winter has been my #1 goal. Today with naturopathic Dr. Owen Wiseman, we will learn how the body responds to natural remedies, how to know when to start taking natural remedies like Echinacea, and how Echinacea works to relieve symptoms and shorten the duration of colds and flus. My name is Haley, and I support our wellness events program with Nature's Fair Markets. Thank you all for joining us this evening, and thank you to Dawn and Mary and Owen and all of the team at Vogel Canada who have partnered with us for this event. The presentation will be about 45 minutes, and then we'll have time for Q&A at the end. Feel free, though, throughout the presentation to ask your questions, and I'll do my best to get them answered or flag them for us to talk about at the end of the presentation. There will be a door prize draw as well from a gift basket from Vogel that we will be sharing at the end of the presentation. So stay online for the talk to find out if you are the winner. Now, before I hand it over to Dr. Owen, I would love to give you some information on his background. He has a long history of guiding and helping others rebuild their health. He shares clinical research on echinacea and how it can support the immunity of both children and adults. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight. We're all very much looking forward to learning from your expertise.
Happy to be here, and I really appreciate the team at Nature's Fair as well. I think we're all just trying to stay as healthy as we can, like especially with the triple-demic that we've all been yes. facing. So I know in my own clinic, it's just been kind of, we see people for a week or two, and then they go away, and then they come back with something new, and then they go away. So we're all just trying to make it through the winter
we're all in this together.
Exactly. So thank you. Perfect. So like Haley said, I'm all about questions. I know it's a little bit of a learning session for us all, but if you do have questions that pop up, if I say anything and you've heard otherwise, it's meant to be a bit of a dialogue towards the end and open up that Q&A. So I hope you learn a lot. I always try and keep it as engaging as possible. And I do apologize if I'm talking a little bit quiet. I'm joining you from further east, so it's later here, and the family is asleep. So let's get this started. We're really talking about supporting your immunity. Haley did a great job. We don't need to read any more about me. You can jump online if you want to do that. I'm my least favorite topic. Now, a big thing about especially any retailer like Nature's Fair, I know for myself that whenever I walk into a health food store, I don't really know where a lot of the products are coming from. And I really do my best to try and learn that. But at the end of the day, I can tell you the staff are amazing at your stores, and often they know a lot more than I do. So I always end up learning so much from the team as well. But I always really like to show when we are talking about the Vogel line, and we're not going to spend a ton of time on this, but this is actually the headquarters over in Switzerland, which is where the products are made. So I always like starting with this because it really sets the story about where are these products coming from and how are they joining. So it's actually a bit of a dated picture. So the green roofs have now grown in, which is really exciting because it helps us work towards our sustainability goals as well. And I'll show you a little bit more about that in a second. But when we say all of our products are made fresh, that has more meaning than you might be aware of, actually. And these are actually some of our rows of Echinacea over in Switzerland. So these are different angles of them. But when our product is ready to harvest, it's really exciting because our farming team actually can just step out of the building, go and harvest the product and bring it right back to the facility to get turned into the product that many of you are using and you love. Because at the end of the day, the faster you can turn it into something, the less downtime there is for it to start to break down and degrade. Because as soon as we cut that plant matter, degradation is going to start. So we really want to make sure that we can turn it into something effective in a short amount of time, really. And these are actually the solar panels, which we just installed and turned on last year. So it's really exciting because we now power about 15% of our energy needs completely with solar. So we're working on it, getting to net zero, but it's a further goal than you might be aware of. Now, one of the big things too the reason that we're chatting about all these different topics today is because each year, influenza alone infects about 10% of the world's population. Depending on what data set we're looking at, it results in about 3 to 5 million people who end up in the hospital. And that's a lot. That's a significant number because it affects not only the person who is sick, but it also has a ripple effect on friends and family. And especially if our health is maybe not the best it could be, and we're a little more prone to longer illness or more severe illness. And we'll talk about ways to defend ourselves against that later on. But the other big thing is when we look at the economic burden that illness like influenza can have on Canada, influenza alone is responsible for about $7 billion in economic burden in Canada. So just imagine if we could use preventative healthcare, if we could use some of these natural methods that a lot of us are familiar with and we're already using to keep ourselves well, if we can switch our healthcare system from a system of I only see someone when I'm feeling terrible. But what if we didn't have to wait until we got to that point? What if we could check in with people when we're feeling well? How much better would that be for the entire system? And that's really where we're focusing today. And you can see kind of from the topics that we're chatting about. Now, one of the big things is if we actually do get infected with influenza, what does that actually look like? And so we know the common symptoms. We know we might get fever, we might get a runny nose, we might be coughing. But at the end of the day, the bigger, more scary part is the complications that the flu can cause. Flu can put you in the hospital and it can be really dangerous, but flu usually isn't what kills people. Even in Ontario, we have about 3,000 people who die annually from the flu. It's usually due to complications. And so some of the more common complications that we're looking at in here are pneumonia. And a lot of us, we know pneumonia, we know someone with pneumonia, and it's that breathing of almost breathing through fluid in the lungs. And it's really, really tough on the body. So we want to make sure we kind of get ahead of it and we can actually prevent how often we're getting those types of complications. And the other thing is they make chronic issues so much worse. So if you're someone who is sitting there and you already have bronchitis or you already have heart troubles, you really, really want to make sure that you're kind of preventing yourself from getting that. And these are why the flu is typically so concerning. Then when we look at one of the major complications, one study, which is a little more recent, it's from 2017, about 3/4 of people who got influenza go on to acquire pneumonia. Now, it might be really mild. And if it's really, really mild, I know myself, if I have a really mild illness, I'm probably not going to go see my family doctor. I'm probably not going to treat myself too heavily, right? I know it's going to pass. I know it can probably fight it off. What I'm more concerned with is that moderate to severe pneumonia. And that's when it gets tough on our body, especially for one of the vulnerable populations, right? So young infants, anyone with special care needs, whether that's a catheter or a G-tube, anyone who's pregnant, and anyone who has an impaired immune system as well. So these are all things that we're really, really looking at battling and combating. Now, the reason why it's gotten even more important to be aware of this is because of the risk of secondary infections and how we traditionally treat secondary infections. When we discovered penicillin, and then we went on to make amoxicillin and all these different antibiotics, it was a miracle. And we saved millions of lives. And I'm the first person to talk about how great antibiotics are because they saved millions of lives. But as we tend to do in America, North America, I should say, is we kind of go with this idea that, well, if a little's good, more must be just great. And that's really the trap that a lot of us fall into. So we did the same with antibiotics. We went, wow, a little has already saved millions of lives. So if we just give it to everybody, imagine how many more lives we could save. The trouble is, it's survival of the fittest. And so the bacteria, the pathogens, the viruses that did survive the exposure to these different antibiotics, they passed that survival onto their children, right? Their offspring, their progeny. And so now you have all this antibiotic resistance that's developing. And the World Health Organization reports that antibiotic resistance is actually one of the greatest threats facing the human population in the decades ahead of us, because you have viruses, some of them like MRSA, And this is dated data, so keep that in mind, 2003. But you have certain pathogens that are resistant to 60% of antibiotics. So it's concerning to me. It's quite scary to read this chart and go, geez, what happens if that reaches 100%? And I don't know if anyone's been watching the new Last of Us series, where a fungal infection kind of obliterates the world, to not mince words. It is really concerning to think, well, that's a possibility. There's going to be some type of virus or pathogen out there that just gets really quite potent, and we don't have a lot to defend against it except for kind of our own natural immunity. So one of the big things we always talk about is pneumonia when it comes to influenza, but what we don't consider is these things called extra pulmonary complications. I don't know if you can see my mouse wiggling around there, but these are some of the more rare complications of the flu that we don't often hear about, even in media or any reports. But it is a possibility that people develop inflammation in the brain, that they develop inflammation in the heart, that they develop inflammation in the muscles, in the lining of the heart, and then in the spine, transverse myelitis. And inflammation in the spine then can go up into the brain and cause encephalopathy. So these are some of those big complications, and they are one thing that I often talk to patients about, to say, look, if you think you have the flu, and it's not confirmed, if you think you have the flu and you're starting to get heart issues or brain issues, please make sure that you're calling me or go see a walk-in clinic just to make sure, right? But that's why we have preventative healthcare measures. So things that really got highlighted during the years of the pandemic, and I think some of us have probably continued to do them a little bit, but I know even in schools, it's really difficult to get all the toddlers to wash their hands regularly. So it was easier during the pandemic, but now, yeah, they're probably wiping their boogers on everything. That's going to happen. It's pretty common. So making sure we wash our hands really regularly, avoid touching our eyes, mouth, and nose, depending on what data you read. It's really interesting because some people say humans touch their face, eyes, or nose hundreds of times throughout the day, but we don't even realize. And I know for myself, it's something I'm really, really trying to be conscious of, but it's so hard. I catch myself bring my hand up to rub my eye and I go, nope, don't do it. And you have to kind of second guess yourself and pull your hand down. So yeah, make sure you just, as much as you can. And I joke with friends now. I say, if you see me start to put my hand up towards my mouth or my eyes, just slap it away. I don't mind that. And then avoiding contact with ill people. A really big thing in the workspace is the stigma that surrounds sick days. So really, we have this work culture before the pandemic where if you were sick, just push through it. Don't be a baby. Come into work. Don't be a baby. Just do your work. That's really detrimental because it's spreading the illness to a lot of people who shouldn't have to get sick. But there's a stigma. And so one thing I really liked that came out of the pandemic, one positive thing was, I think for a lot of people, that stigma disappeared a little bit. I know for myself where if I know people and I know they're sick, I'm going, stay home. Don't come in today, or have patients where they're like, oh no, I know I need to come in person. Nah, don't. Let's do virtual. Okay. We have that option now. So stay home when you're sick and cover your cough. Just make sure you're covering your cough, eh? So one thing I wanted to show, just to highlight how severe this recent triple-demic has been. This is the number of hospitalizations. Now, this data is from Ontario, but it is very similar across the different provinces. I had actually a little bit of trouble following it on Health BC. But what we can see here is this is the average amount of hospitalization. So normally about 50 to 75 people are getting hospitalized every week. During the height of that triple-demic, that jumped up to about 250 to 275 a week, which is astronomical. So you wonder, I know in our own province, and I know reading a lot of news stories out of BC because I try and keep up with the data out there, we saw a lot of healthcare systems struggling. We really lost out on good quality care because we just didn't have the beds. We weren't able to do it. And now it's not even dealing with symptoms like the triple-demic and COVID. Now we're looking at long COVID. So this is a really big topic that we're talking about right now because we need to be aware that the inflammation that viruses and pathogens cause in our body, it often doesn't just magically vanish or magically go away. It stays with us. And what we're seeing now is, especially with long COVID, most of the patients, about 1 in 2 of long COVID patients, are reporting they have psychiatric concerns. So their mental health is heavily, heavily affected. The fatigue is another big one. So they just feel as though they cannot get going. And I know with my long COVID patients, it's I have athletes and now they get tired walking up the stairs, and you're kind of thinking that doesn't make sense. A shortness of breath, joint pain, and chest pain. So if you're someone who's battling long COVID, you might be sitting there going, yeah, check, 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 and check. I have all of those. So that's really, chat with a good naturopathic physician out there, chat with your family doctor, make sure your care team's aware, and really get the help that you need, right? The staff, like I said, at Nature's Fair are incredibly knowledgeable. So go chat with them, right? Even our territory manager, he's often out there. So make sure you if you see him in the store and he's looking through the product, bug him, because he's a really, really knowledgeable guy. And so the way that we're developing long COVID as well is 3 of the main patterns that seem to jump out at us is there's elevated interleukin 6. This is a chemical messenger in the body, and it does serve a really, really important role in the body, but we also don't want it getting too high because that's a lot of messaging happening. And so we tend to see interleukin 6 associated with people who have chronic inflammation. So they're really, really inflamed. And so we don't want levels to stay elevated. Autoantibodies. Anyone with autoimmune thyroid condition, you know what it's like to have autoantibodies. They target and attack our own tissue. Antibodies are good. Antibodies help us defend against viruses and pathogens. But autoantibodies, auto just means it's Latin for self. So these are antibodies that attack us. So they've turned on us and they're attacking our body. So really, we don't want levels of that to be high, because that's how we get a lot of really bad autoimmune conditions. And then we also notice really weird patterns of our immune cells. We can typically track certain patterns of immune cells, but the trouble there is they're really wonky. I don't know a better word to describe it. They're really, really wonky when it comes to the body and how we respond. So one of the things we want to look at are risk factors. Who's at risk of long COVID and who's really got to be well protected? Women, for sure. They're 50% more likely to develop long COVID symptoms. So women should be really targeting their health. Anyone over 70. So automatically I'm going, okay, so women who are over 70, that's an even bigger risk. Then we look at asthma. So if you have asthma, you already have respiratory irritation and inflammation. If you throw another condition in there, like pneumonia, you're not going to do well, right? Anyone who had 5+ symptoms in their first week. So anytime people get sick, I say, track your symptoms. Just keep it in a note in your phone, write it on a pad of paper. And that way, when you go see your healthcare provider, you can open up that conversation and say, these are kind of all of the things that changed this week. And I was really struggling with it. And then high BMI. So anyone who is a little overweight or perhaps obese, you're more at risk. So automatically we go, okay, so women over the age of 70 who are overweight and experiencing breathing problems, that's just a big, big red flag. We want to make sure that these people are really well protected as well, because the consequences of long COVID go far beyond our day-to-day, I need to just battle this illness, right? They have consequences in our health, which we've already talked about, and they have consequences in our work and our kind of, don't think of work as just going into work. That could be volunteering. There are ramifications and big consequences. And then socioeconomic. So there's a cost of living crisis right now, right? We're looking at rising rent rates, rising grocery rates. A lot of us are having rising gas. So it's hard to keep up sometimes. And a big thing is when you're sick, if you can't afford to go into work because you're sick, then maybe you can't afford to pay rent. So we really want to, that's why preventative healthcare is so valuable, because if we can keep you staying well and keep you from getting sick in the first place, there's a lot of value in that. And that's really the realm that I tend to exist in. Now, if you do get sick, let's say you get sick with influenza, the common medications that you're going to be prescribed are the amantadine, remantadine, zanamivir, and oseltamivir. They do work, and I'm not saying they don't work. They do work. The trouble is you kind of have to, they're most effective if you can prescribe them within the first 48 hours of getting sick. I know myself, if I feel really crappy for 24 hours, yeah, I'll probably lie down and take it easy. Might do a bit of work from home, which is, I just, a little hypocritical considering what I just said. But the other side of the coin is I'm probably not going to go call my doctor and go have a conversation with my own naturopath about, yeah, I'm not feeling great. I'll probably wait it out and see what happens. The trouble there is, let's say it is a really bad illness. If I don't go get that medication in that 48-hour window, am I really going to get better? Does it really have that much of an effect? Now, one thing that I've highlighted here is a medication called oseltamivir, also called Tamiflu. Now, the neat thing with Tamiflu is there has been a clinical trial on the Echinaforce hot drink by a Vogel, and it went head to head with Tamiflu, a 75 milligram course of it over, I think, 15 days was the period. And the cool thing with our hot drink is it was shown to be as effective as the pharmaceutical in protecting and treating influenza. So that to me is amazing. Many of us on this webinar, we know the power of natural health products. We know they're effective, but to have good data where a product has gone head to head with a pharmaceutical and was just as effective with fewer side effects. I mean, that I've said that statement hundreds of times at this point, and every time I say it, it is just incredible. I think it really shows the power of plant-based products and natural health products, and I love it. I think it's phenomenal. It's also one of my favorite, most versatile products. So you'll often catch me drinking it as well at home, and sometimes I just take a swig from the bottle. Sometimes I put it into a hot drink. Sometimes I'll make it into popsicles if I have young people in my life visiting, or if I'm just feeling like a popsicle on a hot summer day. That's another big thing. Now, when it comes to diet and lifestyle, I just gave a little bit of an example here. So these are two nurses, and we're going to talk about more lifestyle towards the end, but I really want to talk about how is diet helping protect us against long COVID and other pathogens in general. So we have nurse A on the left. Both of them, same age, they work at the same place, they have the same lifestyle, they both drink the same amount, they smoke cannabis every so often, right? So they're both pretty much the same in the scenario. The only difference is nurse A is a vegetarian. Nurse B is on the Atkins diet. And if you don't know the Atkins diet, it's low carb, high protein. So sounds pretty good. Yeah, who doesn't want to reduce carbs and increase protein? And that's the way a lot of people try and limit themselves, even when we look at keto, right? The crazy part is there was a really, really incredible study. And what we saw come out of that is for people who were following a vegetarian or pescatarian diet, they had a 73% reduction in symptom severity with moderate symptoms of COVID-19. They also had a 59% reduction in severe COVID. And I just think, wow, that is amazing. Whereas when you look at the low carb, high protein group, so this included people who were perhaps eating really high red meats where they're getting a lot of protein, they had an increased risk of moderate to severe COVID. So I consider, I'm not strictly vegetarian. I definitely fall into the flexitarian category where I try and eat mostly plant-based, but if there's the odd really good chicken breast or brisket in front of me, I'm not saying no. If that's just me, I'm not prescribing that for anybody on this call. And that's a really big thing that we can see though, is with the data, all things controlled, the people who followed more plant-based diets did way better. So it really just shows you that meeting basic nutrient goals, which a lot of the plant-based diets do help you to do, they're really nutrient dense, nutrient rich. They have really good benefits. The other thing I want to point out, there was another study, and it was nutrition for hospital workers during a crisis. And those who were following a vegan diet had improved cardiometabolic outcomes. So shortness of breath, heart rate, apolipoprotein A, if you've ever had that tested, and quality of life. at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic relative to all other diet types. And they kind of grouped it against different diet types. So I'm not going out there to say you need to be vegan after this call. That's not what I'm saying. But it is just a way of engaging with our food a little bit more and being more mindful about, well, how do I benefit myself without just pounding a whole bunch of supplements? And we know how powerful diet is. Diet affects everything in our life. So it's a really good foundation, a good place to start. Now, if we do need a little bit of supplement care, that's where you want products that do have clinical research behind them. So one thing I'm really keen on with the Vogel line is research is something that we're incredibly keen on, right? We want to know that the products work. So this is one of the line of products that is kind of the global best flu fighters that we have out there. And it's the most researched cold and flu line on the market. It's the most researched Echinacea line on the market. It's the only researched sore throat spray, Echinacea throat spray on the market. These two have both gone head to head with pharmaceuticals. They're also the only Echinacea products out there safe for pregnant nursing, which to me is huge. So earlier I showed you a little bit about, well, where are we actually getting them from? So this is, like I said, one of our farmers. He's backing in the tractor of the freshly cut Echinacea. They just harvested probably about 30 minutes to an hour ago. And he's backing it into the facility, which is where it gets turned into our product. So what you're seeing here is actually our tincture at the bottom left being made. That's our lab. And then that is Vinathi, who's our head of cultivation over in Switzerland. Phenomenal brain and just a wonderfully passionate human being. And that's where our Echinacea is coming from. So she oversees a lot of the cultivation and makes sure that our product is and our flowers are happy. We like to keep them happy. She goes out and sings to them every Sunday morning. No, I'm just kidding. But maybe, I don't know, would that make a more effective product? We'll have to invite you all out to Switzerland and get you singing in the fields. Now, the big thing, the key facts with Echinaforce, like I already mentioned, is it's safe for pregnant nursing, which to me, that's incredible, right? There's not a lot of things in the natural health world that we can put in a pregnant nursing body. And I really appreciate that there is something out there that we know what illness during pregnancy can do. It can cause mutations. And even this is close to my own family because my mother was quite sick when she had my sister. And so my sister's ear didn't fully form, right? Because my mom had a virus in pregnancy. So we joke looking back, and my sister's great with kind of the ear thing, the ear situation. And we say, Mom, if you had known about these products and you had been taking them, maybe you could have prevented yourself from getting that virus, right? So it's just always something that we think about. Plus, it's safe every day for 4 months, which again, typically we hear Echinacea, you can only take it for 2 weeks and then stop it. With this one, take it every day for 4 months. I've probably taken it every day for 3, 4, 5 years at this point and haven't grown a third eye, haven't grown gills, although that would be really, really cool. Hasn't happened yet. I'll have to wait around a little bit longer. Now, we often hear how bad stress is for us. And I agree that chronic stress is very bad for us, but brief periods of stress can be really actually quite good for us. The example I always give, the next slide's a little convoluted, so don't feel you need to read everything, just listen to me. Stress can be good. When we were hunter-gatherer society, if we were facing down a big tiger or a big bear, we wanted our stress to activate and to kick in, because what happens is for a brief period of time, it makes us more resistant to infection. It also makes us better and faster wound healers. And that for me is really important because when I'm running away from a bear or a tiger, if I get scratched, their nails could be really infected with a whole bunch of different pathogens. And I don't want that getting into my body and making me sick. So those brief periods of stress are actually immunoprotective. They make us feel protected. But now we live in the modern world. We have a little bit more to worry about than finding shelter and food. We have financial stress, relationship stress, academic stress, health stress, you name it. We have stress coming at us from everywhere. So to have that chronic stress, that actually starts to suppress our immune system. Cortisol, when it stays high, the stress hormone, when it stays high for an extended period of time, cortisol is actually going to kill our white blood cells and shut them down. So not good. Not good. We really want to shut that all down. And it's important that we know, when do I actually need to escalate things? So if I'm chronically stressed, when do I go do something about it and try and battle that burnout? So these are kind of what I look into. If you have cough with pain in the chest, shortness of breath, if your throat is really, really red and it hurts to swallow, again, this is where I might go sore throat spray, but also get it checked out. If you don't improve within 7 days, your body should initiate a good immune response. You should start to recover. But if you don't, definitely go get checked out. Now, coming back to that throat irritation, the upper respiratory tract, the part at the back of our throat, the nasopharynx, that's where a lot of the viruses replicate. It's warm, low levels of acid, unlike lower in the esophagus and the stomach. It is dark, it's moist. You don't have as many enzymes back there, because a lot of the enzymes that get released into our mouth come from the parotid glands and other glands in the side of our mouth and the cheeks. So you don't get a lot of glandular secretion at the back of our throat. So what that means is it's a really ideal place to set up shop and start multiplying to infect this human host. And what was really neat is there was a study where they actually took cell cultures from the human airway, from the throat, and in the area where viruses tend to replicate. Both of these cell cultures have been infected with influenza. On the left, you can see, oh my gosh, it's swollen, it's irritated, it's red, it's raw, it's inflamed. There's cell death that's happening. The black parts are cell necrosis. They're dying. We're losing the battle. On the right, they're both infected. This should be happening on the right. So automatically we should be thinking, what's the difference there? The only difference is that on the right, it has been treated with Echinaforce. So this is like using our sore throat spray and spraying it to the back of the throat. It's like chewing on one of the tablets or sucking on one of the tablets to protect yourself and release the compounds in the mouth. Both are infected with influenza. One of them has been treated with Echinaforce. And I kind of leave it to you to guess which one. If you guessed on the right, probably a good choice. And that's because, like I mentioned earlier, our products are really potent. They're really, really fresh. And it's not just us going fresh is better. Objectively, this was a study that was done actually close to home at the University of British Columbia. And they tested dried echinacea versus fresh echinacea, and fresh was 10 times more potent. That means I have to take less to get the same effect. So if you're holding a product and it's sourced from dried stuff, honestly, I would probably just put it back on the shelf, right? And go with something that is maybe a little more effective. The other thing that's really exciting about the Echinaforce line is, I believe, and again, I rely on you to correct me if you've heard otherwise, I think it's the only natural health product with human COVID data. So over the past 2 years, 3 different trials have come out on the Echinaforce line regarding the use of our Echinacea against COVID-19. And it's really exciting because in that first human study, the dose was about 1,200 or 2,400 milligrams a day, 2 of the extra strength. And there was a massive reduction in the risk of catching COVID-19, 63% reduced risk, and reduced the viral load. So when people were doing the nasopharyngeal swabs, those swabs that went way to the back of your nose that felt like they were tickling your brain, you've probably battled one before. The viral load is what makes it a positive or negative marker on the test. And so if we can actually reduce the viral load, we're reducing our risk of passing infection on to other people. The other thing is, and I can actually update this now with Omicron, but it protected against all these different variants of COVID-19, including Omicron, Gamma, Delta, and Alpha and Beta. It got you back on your feet about 5 days sooner, which was really, really exciting because, again, who doesn't want to feel better sooner? We all hate dealing with illness and sickness, so we want to get better faster. So it was a really exciting kind of data takeaway, and I think to have all that research is really quite something. Now, these are just, I like to show images of where the products are coming from. Like I said, these are actually a couple of our team members harvesting Norway spruce buds because they're actually making our throat syrup, our Santacepina sore throat syrup. And it's a really soothing blend that has the Norway spruce buds in there. Honestly, it tastes like you're sucking on a forest candy. I quite like them. They're really, really good. They have the little bonbons and they have the actual syrup as well. Now, earlier we kind of talked about how stress impacts our body. And one of the big things is, how do we actually treat it? Don't worry so much about this slide. We're actually going to skip over it for a second. But when we're stressed, the most common medication family that we hear about is benzodiazepines. If you were to sit 10 of your friends in one room and you said, who's ever been on a benzo? I can guarantee probably about 7 people are going to raise their hand. They might not because they're shy, but it's one of the most common drug classes that gets prescribed. Lorazepam, Ativan, clonazepam, clonopine, alprazolam, Xanax. How many jokes do we see? Grab me an Ativan, grab me a Xanax in TV shows and movie. And then oxazepam, which is also in the family here. They can be used for anxiety and depression. The danger is there is a risk of dependency. So we really want to make sure that we're being mindful that we're following our doctor's orders. We're taking them only as they recommend because we don't want to become dependent. Now, this is a really big thing where these medications, for most of them, are meant to be short term. I had a patient a couple of months ago, and they were taking clonazepam. And I said, oh, how long have you been on it? Probably about 6 months, I'm guessing. Oh, no, I've been on it 10 years. Clonazepam is meant to be a short-term intervention of about 3 to 6 months at most, maybe 8. And I said, what? You've been on it 10 years? What are you talking about? And he said, well, my doctor never told me to stop. He just kept refilling it. So that's really concerning because there are dangers of taking this medication long term. So I wrote a letter to his pharmacist. The pharmacist got the family doctor on board, and we went, oh my gosh, it's just no one has really reviewed their medications in so long. So one thing I really would encourage anyone listening is to audit your medications at least once a year. Go in, chat with your family doctor, chat with your pharmacist, and just sit down and go, you know what, like, do I need to still be on all of these? Can I potentially try weaning off of certain medications? Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of things that we're on. We don't have to be on them every day if we make some diet and lifestyle interventions and we're choosing some natural health products where possible. So definitely I empower you to advocate for yourself. Because if you don't, hopefully you have a support team that will, but many of us do not. So yeah. Now, the thing with benzodiazepines is, looking in the natural product world, there is one herb that has been really, really, really effective, and that's passion flower. So passion flower is a really well-known anti-anxiety herb, and there's a compound in there called apigenin, and I actually posted what that compound looks like. And when they compared apigenin in passion flower to oxazepam, one of our benzodiazepines, they were equally as effective. Now, this study is dated. I would love to see a new one coming out, but currently I couldn't see anything in the clinical trial database. But it just, again, shows you natural products can be really powerful. And that's why the passion flower is actually one of the first products in our relax spray. This is Canada's first botanical anti-stress spray, anti-anxiety spray. So really, if you know anyone who struggles with kind of situational anxiety, where perhaps it's someone who really gets worried about public speaking, perhaps it's someone who gets really worried when they go to their in-laws place, oh my gosh, I know that they're going to bug me about my weight, or I know they're going to bug me about my job. I get really anxious when I go. A couple of sprays of this and you're going to feel a little bit better, right? It's passion flower, lemon balm, and zinc. I also really like that it's portable and travel size. So maybe you're someone who's scared of flying. Head on a plane, just a couple of sprays of that, you're good to go. There's the tab version, which is more meant for when you're going to bed. And we actually traded the zinc in there for valerian, because valerian's a little more sedating. So helps to actually put you to sleep, which a lot of us need. So they're really meant to be kind of a bit of an AM PM blend when we're looking at combining the two. So more situational, use it definitely whenever you need in terms of the situation. And then PM as well, take it before you're going to bed. help quiet those ruminating thoughts. But supplements shouldn't be the only thing we rely on, right? And I was actually really excited to see the American Heart Association this year. It just came out. This was published in December 2022. So I was really excited to get the opportunity to run through it a little early. And they finally recognized Tai Chi and yoga as being really effective for protecting the heart and helping to manage our cardiovascular system. So this is it's a step in the right direction, and I'm hoping the Canadian Heart Association as well steps up and recognizes that. So if you're someone who practices yoga or any type of Tai Chi, you are already doing a lot better than many of us are doing. So it helps with exercise tolerance, helps improve quality of life, and reduces how much inflammation is in the body. And that's a really important part because we talked earlier, especially with the respiratory system, about how impactful inflammation in the respiratory tract in our lungs can be in terms of our long-term health. So if you have any way that you can actually reduce the inflammation in our body, take it. So I really like Tai Chi, especially for any of my aging patients, my healthy aging patients, because it is very gentle. But there's also absolutely brilliant yoga instructors out there who are very, very gentle as well. So I think if you can combine it into your daily routine safely, absolutely go for it. The other thing is meditation. I am a really, really big fan of recommending meditation because I think for many of us, it's a really good way to check in with ourselves and to scan ourselves. And I know for myself, I often do the online yoga with Adriene. I just find her very, very gentle, and she's very approachable in terms of an online yoga class. Plus, she's free, which is fantastic. Now, with this instructor, she does have moments of meditation within her practice as well. So I really like that because it's a chance for me to settle into myself and just be in the moment. Because when we have 1,000 things on our to-do list, I would probably say you're probably like me, and it's hard to settle into just being present with ourselves. So we know if we use mindfulness-based interventions in kids and adolescents in school instead of detention, there's actually better anxiety. We help combat depression. We help combat negative behaviors where maybe they're being really disruptive in class. So there's a lot of different ways that we can really support it. Counseling, I have said this a number of times. I think absolutely everyone in the world should have a therapist, because I think if many of us had a good support system who is outside of our friends and family, who can give us a more objective view of a situation and maybe how we react to it, I think we would avoid a lot of conflict out there. And who knows, right? Maybe it would help the current war going on. It would help people reconcile and care for one another and just have some more empathy for one another, because they would also help you set boundaries, right? No means no. I don't want to do that. I don't want to say yes to everything. What's your boundary? And a lot of us really, we don't know our boundaries. So that's a good chance for us to check in with ourselves and make sure we understand them. Me time, it is something I know I am notoriously bad at booking in for myself. I'm really good at saying yes to everyone else, but not great at saying yes to myself. So now I've actually started booking into my calendar. All right, this is you time. You're going to be blocked off for 45 minutes. Go read a book or make a tea or do a puzzle. Just do something for yourself. Doesn't matter what it is. I'm a huge proponent of nature therapy, and you are all incredibly lucky. I don't know where everyone is joining from. I saw Kelowna earlier, and I also think someone had mentioned Vernon. So basically, wherever you're joining from, you have so much nature at your fingertips, and it's something, being in Ontario, I'm quite jealous how we don't have nearly as much nature. But when I visited, it was definitely lovely to see. And I was telling Haley from Nature's Fair there that I had a chance to hike around Kalamalka and do the hike at Lake Kalamalka. We did one outside of Kelowna. We did another just outside of the Okanagan. So really took advantage when we were out there of all your incredible, incredible nature. First bear encounter too, which was always a great story. And limiting caffeine. We don't want to feel too anxious. I know now this is just a search for myself being here in Ontario, but Psychology Today is a Canada-wide product that we can use. So it's a resource I really like telling people about, because you can go in and you can type in Vernon, you can type in Kelowna, you can type in Vancouver, wherever you're joining from today, and it will tell you some therapists nearby, or online you can turn on virtual. And you can basically go, I want to talk to a therapist, a female therapist who has dealt with substance abuse and maybe domestic. And I want to chat with them specifically. And so it's a really good way to filter until you find someone who really meets your needs. Maybe you want to see they accept Manulife or Sun Life insurance. Okay, great. We can do that too. I'm also, like I said, huge proponent of nature therapy. So I often release some nature therapy benefits about once every 2 weeks on a social media page that I am in charge of. And one of the big things is making sure you're getting enough daylight. In the winter, in the cooler months, we don't get outside enough. We don't synthesize enough vitamin D. So it is really important that you're prioritizing getting exposed to the sun in a safe way. Make sure you have sunscreen on. If not, you could add in a SAD lamp. So this is a lamp that mimics the full spectrum light of the sun. And so we have one at home, and on the really, really dark mornings where it's hard to get going, we'll often turn it on in our office. And that way we actually have the light bathing us. And it's a really good chance to just feel a little bit better and reduce any depression or anxiety scores that are happening. Last thing I'll say is on limiting caffeine, there are caffeine substitutes out there, and this is just one of many. So I just want to point out there are options as well. But the one that is from a Vogel is called Bamboo, and it is chicory root, figs, and acorns. The smell is very coffee-esque. The taste is almost coffee-esque, but if you're someone who really likes a cappuccino or a latte or some other type of really neat fancy coffee, just combine it with a bit of froth milk, a little bit of sweetener, maybe a sprinkle of cinnamon on top, and it tastes fantastic. So I had a cup of it earlier today actually, and it's just a really good way where if you're sitting there craving a second coffee during the day, have this instead. You know, if it's just kind of you crave the second coffee because of routine, pop something else in your mug. And that's it. We'll go over to the questions. I know Haley's going to do the draw as well and let the winner know. But I really can't stress enough that I have an open email. So if you're sitting there after and I don't get a chance to get to your question, or you have a question later, we all learn from each other. It's the most human way of connecting. So if you have questions, the staff and the team at Nature's Fair are, like I said, an amazing resource. Fully take advantage of them. But, you know, if it's a more technical question, by all means, pass it my way. My email is right there at the bottom.
Yeah. And we have like our events at Nature's Fair email as well. So that would have been where your notifications for the webinar came from tonight. And if you don't feel comfortable putting it into the public chat, you can also send it as a private chat message. Right now, there haven't been any questions. I think you've done such a great job presenting that people are just sitting here taking it all in. I know I made a lot of notes, and we'll definitely stay online here for a little bit chatting. Absolutely. And if you're typing your question away, we'll wait for that to come through. But I love that you mentioned yoga with Adrian. A team member in our corporate purchasing office here actually sent out a message in December to our team and said, hey, I've been doing the New Year challenge with her for years. I know I'm always better when I have accountability. Is anyone else interested in doing it? And there were about 15 people that said yes. And so we started our own chat group and
oh my gosh.
did kind of daily updates of if you liked that practice or if you thought it was hard, what you found hard, challenging. And it was my first time practicing with her, and it's free, it's accessible. She's so gentle and suggestive and accommodating, and her dog is so cute.
Benji, oh my gosh, I know. I think I'm on day 17 right now. I'm a little behind because I do it every other day, but my own father, he always complained about back pain and said, Dad, do the New Year's challenge with me. I'll keep you accountable because you're bugging me with how much you're talking about the back pain. And he was just kind of after a few days, wow, I just feel so much more limber and I'm able to go up the stairs without pain. And I said, see, you just had to do some yoga, get some movement into your life. I don't have to hear about your pain anymore, which is a win for me. And it really does show us those movement based interventions are
Yeah,
so powerful.
very powerful. And yeah, the suggestions of the kind of lifestyle changes in combination with these amazing natural products that can have a huge impact. There was a question that came through now from one of our guests, and it says, are all of the products able to be used for a breastfeeding parent or just some of them?
Yeah, so from an official point of view, we only have the pregnant nursing claim on the Echinaforce line, which is the cold and flu line. So
Okay.
that for me is really comforting because I just think anyone who's pregnant or nursing,
Mhm.
it is a very limited market in terms of
Yeah.
what's actually safe to take. Now, we do have other products in the line that have been studied in pregnancy. So even and I don't know if NatureStar cares about our BioStrath fermented multivitamin product. It's been studied in pregnancy, but we don't
Mhm.
officially have the claim in Canada. So
Okay.
little
Yeah.
things like that. Yeah.
Great. Any other questions out there to the group? We still have a few hanging on there. I
Yeah.
will do a random number generator between the folks that are still here tonight and see who gets the door prize. And we have Maggie Grande as our winner.
Congratulations,
Maggie,
Becky.
congrats. If you can send me a message and let me know which Nature's Fair Market location you frequent, we will make sure that it is delivered to you from a Vogel. And yeah, I'll also send a follow-up email to you to make sure that we get that all sorted. It doesn't look like there are any other questions. I know another major takeaway for me was uh, the lifestyle in the nutrition side of things, and the study about a plant-based diet versus someone who eats meat. And myself, I'm fairly similar to you in the sense of like a flexitarian situation, but it was a good reminder that like probably integrating some plant-based meals more often throughout the week is not a bad idea.
No, and I was at the CHFA, so if anyone's familiar with it, it's the Canadian Health Food Association show and Health and Food Association show, and so it happens in April in Vancouver, but then ours out here on the east end of the country is in Toronto in September,
Mm-hmm.
and I got to try some of the new plant-based options that are hitting the market kind of this year and next year.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. I tried the best pulled pork. It tasted
Mm.
exactly like pulled pork and it was jackfruit.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, it was phenomenal. And meatballs that I can't remember what they were made from. They tasted exactly like meatballs, even with the marinara sauce. It was,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, they were so good.
That's exciting. Yeah, we have CHFA West coming at the end of
Yeah.
April here. So yeah, we'll be checking that out, and I now look forward to what I get to taste. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, I know. I wish I could remember the name of the
Yeah,
company, but
we'll
I
watch
will
for it.
say, yeah, watch for it. And I
Yeah.
know someone had asked about acupuncture too,
Yes.
and I mean, I don't want to presume what protocol your acupuncturist was doing, but if you want to, I'll put them in the chat. Just some of the common points that
Mm-hmm.
I tend to use to help stimulate our immune system or modulate support.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those are five of the common
Oh,
points you
thank you.
typically see. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go, Julie. There's a few suggestions to talk to your acupuncturist about. Amazing. Well, we'll let you get off to bed with the rest of your family, Dr. Owen, but thank you so much for your wonderful presentation tonight. We will be saving a recording of it and putting it on our YouTube channel, so it's there for people to listen to if you feel like you wanted to pause a slide or make notes a little bit more, or share it with your family and friends. The product is on sale in store until February 15th, so you can find it and talk to any of our wellness practitioners and team members. They'll be able to give you a hand. So thank you, A. Vogel and Dr. Owen. Have a wonderful
Oh,
evening, everybody.
you as well, Haley. Bye bye. And thank you,
Good
everyone at
night.
Nature's Fair. Take care.